There is a bill sitting in Congress right now that almost nobody is talking about. And honestly, that surprised me when I first came across it because this directly affects millions of Americans who are already retired or getting close to it. I looked everywhere for coverage on this and found almost nothing. So today I want to walk you through exactly what it says, what it means, and what you should actually do with this information. But before we get into the bill, let me just remind you why Social Security matters so much. More than half of current retirees depend on it for at least half of their monthly expenses, and most working Americans expect it to play a real role in their retirement income. So when Congress makes even quiet changes to Social Security, those changes can have a very direct impact on your financial life. The bill we are talking about is House Bill 5284. On the surface, it sounds almost boring. The official description says it is a bill to require the Social Security Administration to update terminology used in its rules, regulations, and guidance materials. In other words, it is a bill about changing what we call certain things. And you might be thinking, why does that matter at all? Stay with me, because I think by the end of this, you will see exactly why it does. The bill proposes three specific terminology changes. Let me walk through each one. Right now, age 62 is officially called the early eligibility age. That is the earliest point at which you can begin collecting retirement benefits. Under this bill, it would be renamed the minimum benefit age. The idea behind the change, according to the bill's sponsors, is that this new name makes it clearer that claiming at 62 means accepting the lowest possible monthly benefit. And that part is factually accurate. Claiming at 62 results in a permanent 30% reduction compared to what you would receive if you waited until your full retirement age. The second change is that full retirement age would be renamed the standard benefit age. Full retirement age, which most people in financial planning circles call FRA, currently falls between 66 and 67 depending on your birth year. This is the age at which you receive your complete unreduced monthly benefit. The third change is that delayed retirement age would be renamed the maximum benefit age. Age 70 is the point at which your benefit peaks. Every year you delay collecting past your full retirement age, your monthly check grows by roughly 8%. By age 70, your benefit reaches 124% of what your full retirement age benefit would have been. Now, here's the honest answer to the obvious question. Do these name changes actually affect your benefit amount? No. The ages are not changing. The percentages are not changing. If you claim at 62 today, you receive 70% of your full retirement age benefit. If this bill passes tomorrow, you would still receive exactly 70%. The math does not move. But words do shape the way people think about decisions. There is a meaningful difference between hearing that you are claiming at the early eligibility age versus hearing that you are claiming at the minimum benefit age. The word minimum signals to your brain that you are choosing something inferior, something to avoid. Early eligibility sounds almost neutral by comparison. Similarly, maximum benefit age makes waiting sound like a clear reward rather than just a delay. These are not the same psychological cues, even if the underlying numbers are identical. And that brings up a concern worth keeping in the back of your mind. When governments update terminology, it is not always simply about clarity. New language can also make future policy changes easier to communicate to the public. Think about the history here. When Social Security was originally set up, the full retirement age was 65. Over the years, it was moved to 66 and then to 67 for people born after 1960. Each time that happened, it effectively reduced lifetime benefits for a large number of people because they had to wait longer to collect their full amount. If the standard benefit age, as this bill would rename it, were to be shifted from 67 to 68, 69, or even 70 somewhere down the road, that would be a significant change for tens of millions of people. And with the new terminology already in place, the argument for making that shift becomes easier to frame. Policymakers could say they are simply adjusting the age at which people receive the standard benefit, while pointing out that the minimum benefit age and the maximum benefit age remain unchanged. That framing could make a genuinely large benefit cut feel far less dramatic than it actually is. Now, let us talk about the real math on when to claim, because most people I speak with have a simplified version of this in their heads that does not fully hold up. Here is how your monthly benefit changes depending on when you claim. At 62, you receive 70% of your full retirement age benefit. At 63, 75%. At 64, 80%. At 65, 86.7%. At 66, 93.3%. At 67, which is full retirement age for most people today, you receive 100%. At 68, you receive 108%. At 69, 116%. And at 70, 124%. As of early 2025, the average monthly Social Security benefit was just under $2,000. The maximum possible benefit for someone retiring at full retirement age in 2025 was just over $4,000 per month. Most people look at those numbers and assume that waiting is always the better choice. But that conclusion depends on an assumption that most standard calculators quietly bake in, which is that you earn absolutely nothing on the money you receive early. It assumes every dollar of every early check gets spent immediately with zero return. When you adjust that assumption, the picture changes. If you take your early Social Security income and set aside even a portion of it, earning just a 2% annual return, the break-even point pushes out to around age 81. At a 4% annual return, the two strategies come out nearly equal across a normal lifetime. At 5%, the difference between claiming early and claiming late becomes almost negligible even out to age 90. And here is the practical question that follows from that. Is earning 4 to 5% annually difficult without taking on significant risk? As of 2025, United States Treasury securities were yielding between roughly 3.7 and 4.4% annually. These carry essentially no credit risk since they are backed by the federal government. So the idea of putting early Social Security money into low-risk instruments and earning a reasonable return is not theoretical. It is available. That said, claiming early is not the right move for everyone, and claiming late is not the right move for everyone either. Here is a practical framework. Claiming earlier may make sense if doing so allows you to stop working during your healthiest and most active years, and those years genuinely matter to you in terms of how you want to live. Having both time and good health at the same point in your life is something money cannot fully replace once those years pass. It may also make sense if your personal or family health history suggests a shorter than average lifespan, or if you have the financial discipline to invest early benefits rather than spend them entirely. Waiting tends to make more sense if you have strong longevity in your family. Social Security is, for most Americans, the only retirement income source that is both guaranteed and adjusted for inflation. It rises with the cost of living. It cannot be outlived. It does not depend on market conditions. The longer you expect to live, the more valuable that combination becomes. There is one more piece of data here that I think deserves more attention. Average life expectancy and healthy life expectancy are not the same number. The World Health Organization tracks what is called healthy average life expectancy, which measures not just how long people live, but how many of those years are spent in reasonably good health. In the United States, that number sits at 66.1 years, just barely past the traditional retirement age of 65. Countries like Japan, Switzerland, South Korea, Singapore, Spain, and France all have healthy life expectancy figures of 72 years or higher. What this means practically is that a large number of Americans are spending their healthiest years working. By the time they reach retirement age, the window for active, healthy retirement is already narrowing. Any policy change that pushes the standard benefit age higher will likely accelerate that problem. Retirement rates across the United States have been declining for 2 decades. Among people aged 55 to 59, the retirement rate has dropped from nearly 20% in the early 2000s to around 11% today. Among people aged 65 to 69, it has fallen from 76% to 70%. fewer Americans are retiring, and those who do are doing so later. Now, let me bring up something that does not get discussed nearly enough in these conversations, and that is the role spousal benefits play in the timing decision. If you are married, your Social Security claiming decision does not just affect your own monthly check. It can have a significant impact on what your spouse receives as well, both while you are alive and after you pass away. Here is how it works. A spouse who did not work or who earned significantly less over their career is entitled to receive up to 50% of the higher earner's full retirement age benefit. But that spousal benefit is only available at its full amount if the higher earner claims at their own full retirement age or later. If the higher earner claims early, the spousal benefit is also reduced. And if the higher earner passes away first, the surviving spouse steps into the deceased spouse's benefit, meaning they receive whatever the higher earner was collecting at the time of death. So if the higher earner waited until 70 and was collecting that 124% figure we talked about earlier, the surviving spouse inherits that larger monthly check for the rest of their life. That is a detail that changes the math considerably for married couples, and it is one of the strongest arguments for the higher earner in a household to delay as long as reasonably possible. There is also a piece of this conversation that relates specifically to people who are still working while collecting Social Security before their full retirement age. Many people do not realize that if you claim early and continue working, your benefits can be temporarily reduced depending on how much you earn. In 2025, if you are under full retirement age for the entire year, Social Security withholds $1 for every $2 you earn above a certain threshold. That threshold in 2025 was around $22,320. This is not a permanent penalty. The withheld amounts are added back into your benefit calculation once you reach full retirement age. But in the short term, it can create real cash flow complications for people who plan to work part-time while also collecting early benefits. Understanding this rule before you file is important because a lot of people are caught off guard by it. Another thing worth understanding is how Social Security fits into your overall tax picture in retirement. Depending on your total income, up to 85% of your Social Security benefits can become subject to federal income tax. This happens when your combined income, which includes your adjusted gross income, any tax-exempt interest, and half of your Social Security benefits, crosses certain thresholds. For individuals, that threshold starts at $25,000. For married couples filing jointly, it starts at $32,000. This does not mean you pay taxes on all of it, but it does mean that for many retirees, Social Security is not entirely tax-free income. If you have other sources of retirement income, such as withdrawals from a traditional IRA or 401k, distributions from a pension, or part-time work income, those can push your combined income above those thresholds and increase the taxable portion of your benefits. Working with a tax professional before you start claiming can help you plan around this more effectively. So here is where things stand. House Bill 5284 may turn out to be nothing more than an administrative update to the language in Social Security documents. That is entirely possible. But the words we use to describe financial decisions genuinely shape how people make those decisions. And the new terminology this bill introduces would make certain future policy changes easier to communicate to the public without those changes sounding as significant as they actually are. What you can do right now is stay informed about what is moving through Congress, run your own numbers using realistic assumptions about investment returns rather than assuming you earn nothing on early benefits. Think honestly about your own health and family history. Factor in your spouse's situation if you are married, understand how work income and taxes interact with your benefits, and treat your Social Security decision as a personal one that no single rule or generic calculator can fully answer for you. The right claiming age depends on your situation, your health, your finances, and what you actually want your retirement to look like. Understanding how the rules of this program are being described and potentially reshaped puts you in a much stronger position to make a decision that holds up over time.